So about a week ago, I think I watched Books and Lala sit down and talk about just what it means to have a favorite author. I have answers. She's asking questions and I have answers and I want to discuss these things, especially because originally I was like, Kayla and I have a lot in common when it comes to how we view our favorite authors. Very similar in that, like, kind of analytical. If it's at least 3 5-star books from that author, they're a favorite. Very similar, very similar. But then I got to thinking more and more about it, and I was like, I kind of want to do a response, and this reminded me of way back when YouTube actually had a feature where you could do a response video to another video. But I was like, I kind of just want to answer these questions, especially because I've been thinking a lot more about authors lately, and I do want to kind of read some of the authors that I call my so-called favorites, because then I got into it and realized that I went with books and authors where I rated them at least a 4.5 or a 5-star, and there was at least 3 of them. I think I only have like 2 authors who would even fit that. But I consider a lot more authors than that as favorites. So I was like, all right, so there's more to this than what I initially thought in my own head. So let's just see how I got to where I got. I tend to think that if an author has 3 5-stars for me, that they are a favorite. But as I've seen, I don't really have that to compare it to. I will say though, if they have at least 3 back-to-back that are published back-to-back that end up not being enjoyable for me, they get bumped from the list. Like, they're just gone. I've lost interest. If you got 3 duds in a row, I'm done. You're gonna have to have a really strong premise to get me to try again. I think that it's totally natural, honestly, because authors are humans. They progress, they change over time. They change their craft to kind of fit their personalities, their interests, the trends, whatever. You know, people grow, people change. So it's only natural that not only would authors also change, but like I know my taste has changed within the past 2 years. Quite greatly, honestly. Like, the genres that I read are not anything like the genres that I read 3 years ago. I should also note that I am not someone who normally pays much attention to authors, so when someone becomes my favorite author, it actually means something, because it means they have caught my eye enough to intrigue me to continue looking out for them. And then I realized I have some authors like that I've only even read 1 book from. Like, they have intrigued me enough, they are on my radar, that I think highly of them. And I think the same goes for the other time I would know an author's name is if I've really been disappointed by them. So it's either a really good thing or a really bad thing if I know an author's name. So I think mostly, pretty much all the books that I have here are kind of exceptions to the rule that I have.
When you think of your favorite author, is it somebody who you have enjoyed all of their books?
The only, I think, author I've really read everything from so far is Kat Howard, and I have enjoyed literally all of these. This is probably the only author that really fits the bill of the fact that I've read everything and enjoyed everything. This is also a case of, like, her writing is like my ideal writing. Like, this is the way that I would want to write. Like, I just find her writing and her storytelling so incredibly compelling, and I just love that it's a bit fantastical at times, and it's gritty and it's dark, but there's just something about it that is just whimsical and, like, brings you in, and it is just like my favorite kind of writing. I normally don't know if a book is being published until it's like basically already published, so I haven't seen if she's been working on anything. It doesn't seem like she puts things out pretty regularly. The last one I read was An Unkindness of Magicians, and that came out a few years ago now, I believe. I would love, because she did, in her short story collection, she did an Arthurian retelling of the Round Table, and it was absolutely fantastic. And then I was thinking, I would love to see a Shakespeare retelling, either King Lear or Macbeth. It's got those darker magical elements mixed in, but I want it to be in a modern setting, because I love when she brings these magical elements that seem kind of archaic into a modern setting, and it works. So I think I would love to see that. Basically, An Unkindness of Magicians meets her short story about the round table. That's what I want from her. It's weird because I have two authors that I would kind of consider in the same vein as Kat Howard when it comes to I am just so incredibly impressed with their writing, and I consider them favorite authors because of their style of writing, but I don't actually enjoy most of their things. Neil Gaiman is one of them. His books are either a total 5-star for me or they're a dud. So, like, the majority of his books are not my favorites, but his writing is amazing and is probably, if someone told me who is the most impressive writer to you, I would say Neil Gaiman. So in that case, I feel like I have to call him a favorite author because his writing is just the first one that I think about when I think of what is a fantastic writer. But I don't even own the books that I even enjoyed by him. I've even DNF'd some of his stuff. Coraline is one of my most hated books, and Neverwhere is kind of not that great. So it's like, why do I consider this author to be one of my favorites if I don't actively enjoy his stuff? But I will still continue. I am constantly intrigued by what he is writing and love to see the story unfold. And then probably the one that is the most confusing to me of all, in the same vein, is Chuck Palahniuk, because I own most of this author's work and am constantly picking his stuff up to buy, obviously. But his stuff is very hit or miss for me. Invisible Monsters is one of my all-time favorite books. Rant, not so much. Fight Club is pretty amazing. I barely even got through Haunted. I'm pretty sure I DNF'd it. Tell All was fine. I attempted the short story collection and didn't care. The rest of these I haven't tried, but he is the one author that I would love to get through his backlog of. Why is that? His writing is so incredibly unique. It is like nothing I've ever read before or since, and I just never, ever, 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 ever know what to expect from Chuck Palahniuk when I pick up his books. And I guarantee it's going to take all my brain power to get through it, and it's going to leave me with a lot of thoughts and feelings when I'm finished. It's going to be a really impactful read, whether it's great or bad. His books are not for everyone, so I barely ever recommend them. I don't really know what else I would want Neil Gaiman to write, because I think he does do fantastic in his, like, mythical, magical type worlds. That he is fine. The thing with Chuck is that, like, I wouldn't even know. He could write about literally the most mundane thing and somehow make it so it's just, like, gonna blow my mind at the end of the story. I think I would love to see a, like, movie script thriller. Kind of like what The Last Final Girl was like. I would love to see Chuck Palahniuk's take on that, because he can take weird formats and fit them to the story however he needs to. Like, just his stuff is just so absolutely mind-blowing every time I read it. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It will blow my mind. So I would consider him a favorite, but I think I only gave one of these books in this stack a 5-star. The only other author I think would actually fit the bill of, like, I have read pretty much all of their things, at least 3 things that have been absolute 5 stars. They are an auto-buy author for me. That would be Ruta Sepetys. The thing is that Ruta writes historical YA fiction, which is where she thrives. She's fantastic at it. She does such well research when she writes about them. They are guaranteed to be amazing every time. But this isn't a genre that I pick up that often. And So is it because I don't have anything else to compare it to, or because she actually just does such a fantastic job? So, but I would absolutely say I have loved everything that I've read from her and probably will. Trisha Levenseller, who I've read the majority of the books that she's put out, and I think I've given pretty much all of these 5 stars. I enjoy them in the moment, but I don't ever think of them again. And it's like, can I consider her a favorite author? Because I enjoy all of these things and have, like, loved all of them, but I don't ever think about them. The one that fits in with the Trisha Levenseller is, like, I enjoy pretty much every Neil Shusterman book that I've read, but is also not one that I, like, think about when someone asks me, who is your favorite author? I don't even think I would think of Neil Shusterman, despite the fact of enjoying everything that I picked up by him. Now, I do know he has a lot of other books, and I am normally blown away by his stories when I read them, but I know he has a lot of other books, and I haven't tried them. So, I don't know, maybe I just need to read a few more to really, like, solidify it, but it's just interesting that this is another author that I don't really consider in the moment.
You read solely, high fantasy books, and then one day you pick up a nonfiction and it's the best nonfiction you've ever read. Do you now consider that a favorite author even though you've never read another nonfiction in your life? Or do you just think of that book?
I think, as I said, kind of with a little bit touching on Ruta, is Kayla also asked, if genre is important when it comes to favorite author and also series. Elizabeth Acevedo. And, like, I've read all of her things. I've enjoyed all of them. I think I've pretty much given them all 5 stars, and so they should technically fit the bill of favorite author. But they don't, because that isn't contemporary, isn't really a genre that I'm pulled towards all the time. And even her writing style isn't my favorite type of writing style, even though I have thoroughly enjoyed all of her books. I will recommend them, but when someone asks me who my favorite author is, I don't even think she would make the top 10. For series, I think most people would expect me to say Sarah J. Maas would fit under favorite author because I've read the most books from her. I have rated pretty much everything from her over 4 stars. So you would think, the thing is, when I think of favorite authors and I'm thinking about books, I put series as if they are one, because to me it is one conjoined story. And that's how I look at it, instead of it just being about just a book. Because, like, I've read everything, pretty much everything that she's put out, and I've enjoyed them all, but I've only technically read, 2, 3 series from her, so that's only 3 books, and I haven't, like, the Crescent City series hasn't been, like, my all-time favorite, and I could equally say that about, like, Cassandra Clare and Holly Black, and a few other authors where I read their Pierce Brown, like, I read their series, but oftentimes I'll just read one singular series by them and not come back. A lot of authors who write series that I love could be auto by authors, but I wouldn't consider them favorite authors necessarily, especially if I've only seen their work in one full series. Someone who has had so many, like Sarah J. Maas, Cassandra Clare, is that for me, that's more about entertainment, and I am much more critical now of them and their writing, so I don't consider them necessarily favorites because I am honestly kind of tired of the same thing that they do over and over again, even though it works for them. Like, it works for them, and that's fine. Cassandra Clare, I would love to just see literally anything outside of the Shadowhunter world. Because at this point, I'm like, I don't know if I would like her as a writer outside of it. There are a few other authors who are, like, right on the edge, I think, of being favorite authors, but I just feel like I haven't read enough from them to really solidify them. But if you would ask me who are some of your favorite authors, I think of these people, one of which is Madeline Miller. I've read Circe and A Song of Achilles and have been incredibly impressed with both of them, so I feel like I need to read a third one to really solidify that, despite the fact that she has shown me in 2 books how much I love her writing. And then I, like, have someone like Chuck Palahniuk, who I've enjoyed maybe 2 books by, but would consider him a favorite, despite the fact that I haven't enjoyed, like 7 of his other books. The same goes for Grady Hendrix. I have loved his most recent 2 books, but I read one that was, I believe, one of his like a debut and didn't really care for it. So it's like, I guess I'll read the next one that is recently published. Maybe he's grown as a writer and see if that makes a difference. Was it because that other one was so far back? I don't know. I also would love to see him, because he does write, I would love to see him write from a male perspective for once, like about a group of guys or something. I think he would do a really fantastic job with like some sort of camping trip of some sort. And I don't like the over-the-top supernatural, but I like the subtle supernatural that was in the Southern Book Club guide. And Final Girl Support Group, I thought was a full-blown thriller, but he has a way of writing these really eerie, creepy scenes, and I think he would do really good at writing like some sort of camp story. I don't know, maybe like an amusement park. I feel like he could really do an amusement park, like Neil Shusterman did an amusement park thriller, and I think I would like to see that from Grady Hendrix, because I think he could do like a carnival or something as well. And then also Alex E. Haro, who I loved 10,000 Doors of January and also A Spindle Splintered, and both of these, the writing, it just really stands out to me. I think she's a fantastic writer. I just kind of up there with Kat Howard, but just not quite on that level yet. And I feel like I just need like one more thing to really solidify how much I love her writing. So also kind of close, but not quite. With Jandy Nelson, only read 2 things because she only has 2 things. I know we are getting a 3rd one soon, so I'm eager to see if that will solidify it for me or not, especially because it has been so long. Did I read these in their peak whenever they were great? Is her writing still going to hold up to me now? We'll find out.
How much of an author's backlist do you feel like you need to have read to consider them a favorite?
Now, Rebecca Roanhorse, now I know she has all kinds of other books to read. I love the Sixth World series, and I need to read Black Sun, so I know she has other books that I just need to get to in order to solidify this for me, because I really like her writing, especially because it's, even though it's like fantastical, it's like humorous and very down to earth at times and gritty, and I just really like that. And same with Stephen Graham Jones. I've read some of his stuff, have really enjoyed it, but I need to read more of his backlist to see and really solidify it for me. I know he has a massive backlist that I would love to get to, and this is another one where it's like the writing is what stands out to me, and that this has also become more of a taste. I'm not too sure if he would have been up my alley 2 years ago, but I'm loving his stuff now. So I have been really intrigued. This is an author that I actively seek out currently. I have like 2 authors that I like actively look for their things when I'm out and about, and Stephen Graham Jones is one of them. P. Djeli Clark, I've only technically read 1 thing by, but was so impressed by the writing that I have quickly filled my TBR with his other works. So I love the alternative historical retellings, I guess, in a way, alternate reality with magical elements and bringing in other mythology and whatnot. So I would love to fully read more, because I do think I would love anything else that I would read by this author, just because I was so impressed with the writing the first time around. Same with Sylvia Moreno Garcia. So impressed with Mexican Gothic that I immediately went out and bought more books just by this author to read at some point, because I just have a feeling I'm going to love it. Now, some that only currently have 1 book, and I am just begging for them to come out with others, because right now, even though they have 1 book that I have absolutely loved, I think it's more of the subject matter of these books, and I don't know if they did any other books if I would love them as much. Elizabeth Thomas with Catherine House, I don't know. This book just really worked in the subject matter of it for me, but I don't know if this author put out anything else, if I would enjoy it. Same with If We Were Villains, my all-time favorite book. I don't know if ML Rio put out anything else if I would enjoy it as much as I love If We Are Villains. Would it be as good? I don't know, because these both have subject matter that I really love. Secret society, dark academia, mystery stories. Am I going to love anything else by them if it's not this type of content? I think the only other thing is that I did just want to talk about some authors who, like, I feel like I think of, but they're kind of dropping for me. Like, they're kind of on the cutting block. It is weird because even though contemporary isn't really my go-to, not something that I consider myself a big reader of, once upon a time I probably would have told you that Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigma Broca were some of my favorite authors. However, I loved their first two and have since disliked the two that I read after that. So it's weird because they went from being some of my favorite authors to quickly, like, being on the chopping block of my favorite authors list because I was just, like, that drawn in by their stories at the time. So it's weird that, like, this is an author that I would have thought of, but not someone with a higher rating. Put out an adult contemporary, which I am interested in. Leigh Bardugo, I would consider her a favorite author because I love the Grisha world, but I don't love those books. I look back, and even though I will tell people those are some of my favorite books, I look back at the ratings, and the ratings I put for them weren't great. They're pretty mediocre. But Ninth House has really surprised me, and I think if she stays in adult fantasy and stops trying to fuck around in the Grisha world, she could become a favorite, but she keeps returning to YA fantasy, and I just think that her skill really shined in this adult, like, dark mystery instead. Riley Sager, I would have told you it was one of my favorites because these two I love, but the last two books he's put out I have not enjoyed. Actually, I, like, hated the one from last year. It was one of my most disappointing books ever. I find his stuff has become very predictable for me, and I just don't feel it's very original. So I was impressed with these two, but everything after that has just kind of felt like meh. So I'm kind of just like, I don't know how to feel about that, because I would tell you Riley Sager is probably my go-to mystery thriller author. Same with Megan Miranda. All the Missing Girls is one of my all-time favorite mystery thrillers, but the last two that I've read from her, I've immediately forgotten. I can't even remember if I read this one. And I didn't even read the one that she published last year. Nervous that it would be my third bummer and I'd have to remove her from my favorites list. For these two to, like, step outside their comfort zones a little bit, I would love for Megan Miranda to just go, like, full horror one time, just to try it out. Not necessarily, like, gory horror, but just, like, something true horror, because right now she basically just does the Missing Girls trope over and over and over again, and I'm kind of just like whatever about it. As for Riley Sager, I don't know what I would want from him in order to kind of bring it back for me. I honestly think that The Lake House is going to be a bummer this year. I don't find any mysteries that take place in lake houses to be very original. I think that they tend to be pretty predictable. So I think it's going to be a bummer. I would love to see him just, like, step out with something totally original, because, like, Final Girls, despite what Riley Sager thinks, even though it was not the first, it was a pretty original concept. There's only a few books with this concept. And even The Last Time I Lied, which takes place at a summer camp, which isn't totally original, but the way that he went about it kind of was. I love those. Actually, I hated Every Locked Door. I didn't like the one last year. I didn't mind the one that was, like, the family with the haunted house with the authors, because I love books where they talk about authors in the family. But I think I would like just something totally different. I don't know what. I just don't know what. Maybe a step into the paranormal direction. You know, a big thing in Kayla's video is it was more wanting what she would want to see from these authors more of. And for the most part, I think all these authors do, they work so well because they know what they're doing. As you can tell, I like, it seems, stories that have some sort of fantastical element mixed in with them. And I love books that take me by surprise. And writing is a really big factor for me. What is the point of me rambling about all this? There isn't one. I just wanted to answer Kayla's questions with my own answers. And so it might make a little more sense when I get into doing favorite authors videos, like solidifying favorite authors, because apparently I don't even know what means a favorite author to me. I thought I did, and then I proved myself wrong in literally every aspect. Does any of this make sense? Do you feel this way? Like, what, I guess, not so much like who is a favorite author, but what makes a favorite author? Is it the writing style? Like, how important is writing style? Is it how important is the actual storyline? How important are the characters within what they're writing? Like, how important is originality? Where do all those factors come in? I feel like I need like a fancy compile for like author judging. Is it because an author wrote like one really fantastic book and their writing really stood out? Or is it because it's just someone that you consistently enjoyed, even if their stuff is basically the same story over and over again? Like, is it because they become a comfort? Is it because they're well known? There's just, I feel like, a lot that goes into it that makes it a little more difficult to narrow down. I don't, like, there's just, I still don't even have my top 10. Thanks for hanging out on my floor with me. I'm going to end this now as I keep rambling, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!